Nicolas, there's been lots of discussion in recent weeks, especially coming from the ECB, about the creation of a European banking union. What would such a union consist, in your view?
There are many different things you can say when you say banking union. My view is that banking union should mean a European framework for banking policy, and European meaning more integrated than it is today, something like a federal framework or quasi-federal framework. Now, banking policy encompasses different instruments. There is supervision, there is crisis management and resolution, there is deposit insurance, and of course there is the regulations, a set of rules that apply to banks. We already have a fairly unified situation in the European Union when it comes to regulation. We have a single rule book, or at least the aspiration of a single rule book, and this is covered by current legislation. But if you think of supervision, crisis management and resolution, and deposit insurance, we have very loose coordination or harmonization, including through the newly created European Banking Authority. And one of the lessons of the euro crisis is that at least for the eurozone, we need more, and we need more probably quickly as part of what needs to be a eurozone crisis resolution.
When you're talking about a European banking union, is it really at the EU level or is it specific for the eurozone?
I think it depends on what instrument you have in mind. If you think of deposit insurance, I would say yes. I think what we need is a eurozone deposit insurance, ultimately a federal deposit insurance in the eurozone, perhaps a more ad hoc mechanism in the first phase to re-establish trust among eurozone depositors as a stopgap measure. If you think of crisis management and bank resolution in the current context, in the context of the current crisis, I think we need an ad hoc mechanism that frankly has to cover the eurozone, but may cover also some other countries. You could imagine that, for example, Sweden, Denmark, Poland, some other Euro plus countries would participate in that temporary framework. If we think of supervision, we also could think in Euro plus terms, perhaps even someday including the United Kingdom, even if the United Kingdom doesn't want to participate in the Eurozone for any foreseeable future. So I think depending on which instruments you're looking at, we may have a slightly different perimeter, at least for some time, but at least we need the Eurozone, certainly in the context of the current crisis.
Now, what kind of time framework do we have in mind here? Is this a long-term project or is this something that could happen still this year?
I think we're talking about different steps, and it won't be completed before several years from now, because there are some very deep legislative changes and even political changes. Some of them may be needing changes in the treaty, but beyond the legal aspect, I think there are so many different things that have to change to have a consistent European framework for banking policy that this will take several years. But I would argue that the first steps have to be very quick, because right now we have a fast erosion of confidence in the banking system in the Eurozone. We have a dysfunctional intrabank market. So I would say in terms of reassuring depositors that their deposits are safe, and probably the first steps of restructuring, system-wide restructuring of those banks which need it, it has to happen this year, and possibly even in a relatively short horizon of the next few weeks or months, not waiting for the end of the year.
If the first steps could still happen this year, do you think that could be helpful for the Spanish situation?
Well, first, I'm not sure there will be a summer break, because the current developments are so serious that I guess at least some of the decision makers will not be able to enjoy much vacation this year. This is a minor collateral damage, perhaps, of a very serious situation right now. As regards Spain, indeed, Spain is a very good example of the noxious connection between the dynamics of sovereign debt and sovereign risk in Europe and the dynamics of the banking sector. And indeed, I think it might be necessary to break that connection through a direct intervention of the European level in the Spanish banking sector. I don't know exactly in which time horizon, and it will also depend on other developments, not least what happens in Greece. But I could imagine the necessity of a European intervention directly into the Spanish banking system, which would be indeed a form of embryonic steps towards a banking union, because you would have to define a banking policy at the Eurozone level or European levels that currently doesn't exist.
Thank you very much.